encouragement at all times in the execution of my duties and responsibilities. I therefore remain deeply indebted to him for his guidance, leadership, and care for our country and the entire population. On a personal note, Mr. Chairman, I must put on record my appreciation of the conferment of the Government Personality of the Year award. In accepting the same with humility, I must also acknowledge that this award belongs to both the Ministry of Tourism and the country, without whom I would not have been able to achieve what I've achieved. Thus, this provided an opportunity for us to build and sustain our success, to put the broadest smile on the face of the Smile Coast and the Gambian people. Just before I end the statement, Mr. Chairman, I want us to understand that we need you to put pressure on us to deliver dividends of democracy for the African people. It has taken us too long a time. We can no longer take excuses of colonialism for our failed policy of government, our failed system of government, the nature of corruption that we have been running Africa. Africa needs a new face, a new type of leadership that is determined, that is ready to serve its people. We cannot be left behind. We cannot be left behind. We have to work hard, and leaders must set examples. We are elected to give services to our people. We are not elected to steal from our people. And we must set the example. And if Europe can make it after the Second World War, Asia is able to make it less than 30, 40 years ago, I see no reason why in Africa, elected leaders cannot forge ahead and move on the issue of national development to satisfy the people. I think it's high time we look inwards and look at ourselves and give where it is necessary and do when it is necessary. And I believe that the press have a role to play. You have a role to play to monitor, to look what we do, to expose our weaknesses and give us ideas and suggestions as to how we can move forward. And African leaders must think that the dynamics of African politics have changed. The system of governance also must change if we want to maintain stability. The thousands of Africans who are dying in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Mediterranean Sea, is the same, a disgrace to all African governments. And we have to look at how we can resolve this issue, because there's a lot of hope. If you lose hope, your only end would be to be thwarted, and when you get thwarted, you get frustrated, and when you get frustrated, you go mad. And that's what we have seen our people. They know they're going to die, and they're ready to go there and die, because they have no hope at home. We must restore that hope. I can assure you today, in the Gambia, it has dropped by over 80% of people who are leaving. And that is because the President Barrow has set the example. He has set the leadership quality that the people need, and our youth, 60% of our population today, have got their hope restored, and the Gambia being the second largest in terms of numbers for those who are crossing that Mediterranean today, we have reduced that number by 80%. And that is an achievement. And we must do what it takes to give our people what they need. We have no excuse, and we cannot depend on aid. We cannot depend on grants. We have the natural gift of God. What the Asians have got, we have it. In fact, we have more resources today than the Asians. We have the oil, we have the gold, we have the diamond, we have the bauxite, we have the sea, we have the water, we have the land, and yet still we remain poor because of bad governance. But how do we resolve this? We must give guarantee to leaders when they leave office. That is also important. You are fighting corruption, but give them guarantee that when they leave office, they have somewhere they can survive. There is something that guarantees their survival. There is something that guarantees the education of their children. There is something that guarantees what they eat. Once that is done, we will start seeing a headway. And this is what we need. We must work hard, and nobody will do it for us. but we have to do it for ourselves. And I think this is where we need to set ourselves. I thank you all for this, and I call on the press to continue to guide, to help the ordinary, the voiceless, to make sure that what is necessary is done, and those that are elected live up to expectation. We cannot do it alone, we have to do it together. And once everybody knows you are on guard, you will be careful of what you do. And once you know when you leave office, you will be guaranteed survival. You will also know what you will be careful of what you do. I think both of us, all of us together, need to do it and move forward. And again, as I said, we cannot abandon our culture. What we are, who we are, determine what we are tomorrow. The Chinese Cultural Revolution gave them what they have. And we've seen how Britain maintained culture. The only country without a one of the few countries rather, without a written constitution, because they believe in their cultural values and practices. Africa, we cannot abandon what we are. We need to make sure we retain what belongs to us and maintain who we are and what we are in order to have an identity in the world. And I think it's important. And I thank the African Leadership Magazine. I thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Talking from Gambia. Well spoken, very, very interesting, and I look forward to meeting him later.
Wow.
And, wow, that was really good. Thank you.
Wow. As we recover from that very passionate and inspiring speech, can I ask us to one more time please put our hands together for the Honorable Minister. I have to say, it's not often we hear an African minister speak in that manner. So, sir, thank you very much. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for encouraging us. Okay, so moving forward tonight, I heard some weapons of mass destruction going on as the minister was speaking. Save for the spoons and the plates, may I ask that, I know some of us have 2, we have 3, just in case you're confused and you're not quite sure what I'm speaking of, I'll just raise mine up. I'm also guilty, I've got one. So if I may ask us, please, you need to take a call. Can I ask that you please step outside and do so if it's important and urgent. It's quite distracting when we're speaking and then the call is being answered in the room. Thank you all so much. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to our conversation that our chairman made mention of earlier. Can we put our hands together for our conversationists? Our conversants, they're going to speak tonight. Let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. David White. He's the chairman of GoTree Holdings. So let's give him a warm welcome. And Mr. White is going to be, the conversation is going to be anchored by Mr. Martin Roach. Can we please put our hands together for Mr. Martin Roach? As you can see, he has come very prepared. But gentlemen, I know that you had 20 minutes, but thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite difficult to follow such a fantastic speech from the Honourable Minister, who really was inspirational and spoke enormously important truths. My job tonight is to help you all celebrate great things about Africa. And I'm going to speak to David White, who began his investment career in Nigeria 40 years ago. He returned to the UK to join a leading merchant bank and founded a specialist consultancy in merger and acquisition and financial services. And he continues throughout all that time to be heavily involved with Africa. He's currently chairman of GoTree Holdings, which is a business in Sierra Leone. He's a director of a DRC company, Faronia, and serves on the investment committee of the Africa Agriculture Fund. And he recently stepped down as chairman of the Emerging Africa Infrastructure Fund, which is rapidly approaching a £1 billion fund. which has done over 70 projects, support over 70 projects in 22 sub-Saharan countries. Welcome, David.
Very much, Martin. I hope these microphones are on, aren't they?
They are on. A long career, David. Looking back on 40 years of your involvement with Africa, what most impresses you about Africa today?
Well, it's a very long career. I wouldn't go into ramble on that really hard. But lots impresses me about Africa today, and in particular, I must say, Minister, a speech like yours seriously impresses me. So thank you very much. I think the biggest thing of all that impresses me from the change over the years I've been involved is the increase in activity in the confident private sector in business in Africa. I think I am using the term advisedly of Africa here. Normally, I'm one of the people who believes Africa is a series of sovereign states and different economies and different cultures and shouldn't be trusted together, as it sometimes is. But this is African leadership, so I think tonight we have permission to talk generalities about the continent. But what I've seen is the great increase in the success and confidence of the private sector, the financing of the private sector, and not everything in the various economies. So that is one thing that impresses me. What also I think is really, really impressive and positive is the way that positive messages are being sent around the world about African talent and capability through the world of music, obviously, the great growth in world music and dance, the art and the culture that has now always been embedded in the African culture, particularly in West Africa and the DRC, with artists in Zimbabwe, the sculptures. They've got a global recognition that's been right out there for talking. And the world also knows that healthy art means healthy culture, so it's a tremendous signal that's going out there. I've enjoyed African art for years, but I think now it's out there on the global stage. A partly similar thing to that too, and we see many examples of it here tonight with some of the glorious dresses that have been worn, but African fashion has always been powerful, always been something that the populations have embraced and exuded and carried on with, and are now exporting it to a much wider world and a much wider market through the fashion shows in Lagos and Kinshasa and Dakar. Fantastic stuff. I like all of that.
Thank you, David. Can I move us on to a drier, but a subject of enormous importance, particularly, of course, to the private sector, to the growth of the private sector in Africa, is what do you think, as an investment banker and someone who's invested in Africa for very many years, what do you think needs to happen to stimulate the capital markets, the debt and equity markets in Africa?
Right. Well, I think that the first comment to make in reply to that is that I think the capital markets have been doing quite well. Over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a lot of private equity fund formation. A lot of it, I have to say, rather ill-informed and rather over-optimistic. But it has meant that a lot of capital has gone into a lot of corporations. And so you are getting a lot of startups backed by private equity. You're getting good companies being able to grow further through the input of private equity. And I think that's been enormously successful. The public market's somewhat less so, but I think that's a natural evolution. Gradually, more stronger companies will come to stand and raise capital internationally. International capital markets. But debt is the bit that bothers me. And the banking system as a repository for deposits is very strong, but as you probably all know, the financing side of it is it just buys government bonds because there's lower capital requirements, there's high returns, and the market, the supply of debt to the corporate market rapidly. So, but because most African economies are innovative and thoughtful and take problems and address them and try and solve them, what we're seeing is the beginnings of more and more companies that are setting up to be lenders, but not necessarily banks. corporate lending companies to watch that space, because technology, which is another of the great things that has impressed me so much about Africa in the last decade, is embracing the application of digital technology to make life a lot easier in a lot of sectors.
One more last question. I can see our own dinner over there. We want everyone to have their own dinner. Donald Trump is recasting the global world order. What would your advice as a businessman be to help Africa get its message and be part of framing the new world order and not just being imposed on it?
To me, the answer is simply application. The answer is to use regional organizations, including various other regional African organizations for lobbying, sending messages on what are the disadvantages attempting trade, business relationship between the US and and if there's upheaval going on, as there is with Brexit, and there is with Trump's approach to foreign relations, it may an opportunity to reverse some of those.
Thank you very much, David. I can see that I've been encouraged to wind up, so thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Can we please put our hands together for the gentleman? Thank you. Our next speaker tonight, as we are talking to our dinner, I'll be grateful if we can lend him our ears. Can we please put our hands together and welcome Mr. Tim Morris, who's the Senior Trade Advisor for African and Foreign Commonwealth Office. Let's put our hands together for him as he comes. I know that our hands are busy, but Mr. Morris is making his way through. Can we put our hands together for him once again?
Thank you, Priscilla. I know you only have another 6 speakers to go, so I will be quick. I am representing the British government, and I want to say what a privilege it is to be here this evening. Dr. Ken and the African Leadership Magazine, thank you for the invitation. Minister Rao, thank you for an inspirational speech. Ambassadors, High Commissioner, CEOs, of which there are many, ladies and gentlemen. I am here representing the Minister for Africa in the British government, Harriet Baldwin, who unfortunately couldn't be here but sends her very best wishes. She, as you can imagine, as a British politician, is very busy with Parliament at the moment. And so she has sent me along. I advise her and the British government on trade and investment with Africa. I'm a former ambassador. As we call them, a recovering ambassador. I was ambassador in Morocco, Mauritania, DRC and South Sudan. So I have spent 10 extraordinary and gripping and happy years in Africa. And I'm committed to Africa for the rest of my life, I hope. I really want to pass on a couple of messages from the British government, because I think sometimes that we are thinking lots of thoughts, but we need to communicate them. We need to get those thoughts out and actually let business in this case, but also our African friends know what is going on and what we are thinking. And I bring you really a news of a real energy on the part of our ministers about Africa. There's much discussion going on about Africa at the moment. In terms of many aspects. The one, obviously, in terms of this evening I would like to touch on is that of trade and investment. And the reasons for our interest are obvious. Africa is on the move. 1 person in 4 will be an African by 2050. 1 person in 4 on the planet. And that brings challenges to Africa, but it brings enormous opportunities. And they are opportunities which we in the UK are determined to work on together in partnership with our African friends. We have a big commitment to the development of Africa, and I think if you stand back and think about it in terms of aid which is being given, help on the humanitarian side, development assistance, probably of any major country we are doing as much as anyone. But I think the significant thing, and it reflects a key point which the Minister made in his extraordinary speech, is that we must shift, we must all shift, we must all move on. And I think the big shift for us in our policy is towards a concentration on the economic development of Africa, led by Africans. And the only sensible contributions we can make from outside are in harmony with what the leadership of progressive African countries wants. So a lot of our assistance and British taxpayers' money is now going into, whether it is CDC, whether it is capacity building programs, but it's going into the economic development of those countries who are signalling clearly their wish to progress. We're convinced that the development of Africa depends on economic development, growth, and specifically private sector engagement. And those leaders of countries that, and we heard from Gambia, who take that path, are going to attract an enormous amount of support and interest from countries such as ours, both from a government point of view and from the private sector. We in the UK, we need to do better on Africa. We may be the second biggest investor in Africa. We may be able to come out with these simple, rather formulaic bits of evidence about how much we are doing. We may also have and I believe we do have, the strongest and most talented African community of any country outside Africa. Our African community in the UK, which is a British community as well, which identifies with us, which is us, makes the most enormous contribution, and one which is, I would say, taking off with the young generation coming through. So we are coordinating ourselves in government. We're doing a lot which is still behind closed doors. We hope to have more to say in public in future. We're increasing our presence in Africa. Our diplomatic network, our embassies, our high commissions are going to increase in terms of staff. We are reopening the 2 high commissions in the 2 Commonwealth countries where we have not had them. That is in Maseru and Mbabane, in Lesotho and in Swatini, what used to be Swaziland. We're very proud of that. I personally was the head of the section for those 2 countries when we had high commissions there, and we look forward to reopening them. We also are going to strengthen our presence in Francophone Africa. Though the definitions of Francophone and Anglophone and Lusophone are increasingly meaningless in the modern world. But we will go more into countries where we have been quite weak in the past, where we have not had people, and therefore we have not perhaps encouraged investment from a government point of view. But above all, I think the single thing which I was going to say keeps us awake at night, but that's the wrong image, but which excites us in the morning, okay, are the young of Africa. And on a good day, I think we're all young, because being young is a question of thinking about the future. But there is this extraordinary wave of talent which is blowing through Africa, which is here with us. It's here in the city, it's here in our schools. We have our children at schools who are in the same class as brilliant young African origin children. And we are so close. The 2 continents, this country and Africa, are close. We're close psychologically, and there is an enormous opportunity coming down the track from this. So, to sum up, our government thinking
Hello,
is moving in the
Kathy.
direction
It's nice
of a
to
new
see you.
partnership
I
with
can't
Africa,
speak, but I'm
with
in
more
here and
energy in
I'll talk to you
it,
later. Thank you,
with a
Julie.
very positive view of trade and investment, recognizing all the challenges, that a lot of this is a long-term game, but the long term, and the long term is never that far away, we will be more together. And so we look forward, all of us, to working more on Africa and to working with our friends. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. Thank you, thank you. Our next speaker, moving on very, very swiftly. Can we please put our hands together for Mr. Salva Panka? He's the CEO of Club UK. Let's put our hands together for him as he comes. Mr. Salva is on his way. Warm welcome, people. Warm welcome. Thank you.
Excellencies, friends, respected elders, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I wanted to spend a bit of time today giving consideration to the purpose of education. My career is in education. When Tahir said, can you say a few words, I just thought, well, let's talk about what I do, which is education. Education needs to do more than just develop curiosity and inquiring minds. It must cultivate commitment to self-improvement and promote constant learning. The Minister talked about various challenges and what the countries have achieved in the Western world and the Asian world. One of the primary causes of that change is education. But education not in the sense of what we all have perceived as education, and perhaps I'd like to share some thoughts with you. So let's go back to the formalized education system provided by institution. You all remember the teachers and the lecturers organizing a learning space, learning experience, who subdivide the classes and lecture groups. Can you all remember all that in school? And can we think when this was invented? Any guesses in the room? I'd love to have an interactive session. I know you're having your dinners, but when do you think the whole class-based lecturing system, which is happening in Asia, which is happening in Africa, which I know a lot about Kenya, because a lot of our Gujarati friends come from Kenya. So when did this education system start? Can anyone tell me from the whole? Mid-century, 19th, 18th, 17th. It goes back to the 16th century. The majority of the world is still working to a modified version of the educational system, which is based on the third education revolution dating back to, as I said, the 17th century. Yet the world has changed so dramatically since then. Would you agree? Does anyone say the world hasn't changed? But in particular, the 21st century, the education system is about, I'm sure you have all come across the fourth education revolution. What is the elephant in the room for that fourth education revolution? Something starts with an A. Artificial intelligence. The power of technology and the rise of new ways of learning and the internet imparts powerful new opportunities for us to become our own teachers. And I think the Minister referred about how do we change. And I read a book recently and it said, you'll have to do it by yourself, but you can't do it alone. When a situation comes up where we are in a particular position, we always blame somebody else. We always blame the circumstances. It's somebody's fault. It's not. It's here. And that's what the Western world or the Americans, and something I'd like to share with, one of the greatest books written by the Napoleon Hill. I'm sure some of you would have read The Think and Grow Rich. He wrote about the 500 successful people in America and what we need to be talking about. Much of the debate in Britain today over the role of character formation in schools revolves around the purpose of education. What is character? we loosely use that word, oh, we've got to have character, and all the rest of it. And in fact, when we started our education group, I started with my father and my wife just about 20 years ago, and we said the end of education is character. Perfectly honest, at that time I didn't know what it was. My father said it, and I said in the Asian culture, yes, Dad. But what is character? And I think our research says that character is your thoughts, feelings, and actions are in harmony when you are in good character, when you are in integrity. How many times we say something, whether it's a stage or whether it is somewhere else, but what we feel inside is completely something else. If you're not in harmony, I don't think we are educated. I vividly recall a great quote from an author, a Harvard professor, Gardner, and he said, don't ask how intelligent a child is, ask how is a child intelligent. Think about that. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Shaping character is a necessary and a vital aspect of education. And that's why the conflict is happening. Because we are not in harmony with our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we're just literally conflicting ourselves and just saying what other people want to hear. I vividly recall this, and I just feel it's so powerful. Let me just sort of go into the next level of what is the new fourth generation of education. The definition of intelligence is changing, and the fourth educational revolution, which is already on our doorstep, whether we like it or not, the change is inevitable. But changing is our choice. It will be demanded of us as educators to ask a very important question. Will these changes, will this artificial intelligence liberate us or infantilize us, the humanity? Both can happen. If you don't act, one of them will happen, because that's how the nature works. Recently, Sir Anthony Seldon, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Buckingham, has published a book on this, and if anyone wants to make a note of that, he wrote about this, and it's a beautiful book. It was only published just a few months ago, and it's a beautiful read, which I had the privilege and pleasure to work with Anthony. A fully educated person, therefore, has the thirst for knowledge and a curiosity that will last until their final breath on earth. When I left university, which I didn't have enough money to go to university, I came to this country, I just thought when I trained as an accountant, and I just thought, oh, that's the last thing I want to study. But now, studying is every day. If you don't study, you're not going to get anywhere. And I think, as the minister said, if you really need the change, you really need to know who you are. A fully educated person is that. And I talked about Napoleon Hill, and I don't know how many of you have come across Napoleon Hill. He's a great author. So the story of Napoleon Hill is quite fascinating. Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish industrialist in the 40s and 50s, a British successful businessman, went to the US, and then he was at that time the richest man in the world. And Andrew Carnegie said, look, I'm just really going to die, not really sharing with the world how the successful people are successful. Then he met young Napoleon Hill. Please make a note of this. It's a beautiful book, and you must read it. And if you look at and talk to some of the successful leaders in the United States, they all have read this. Not once, not twice, 1,000 times. And what did Napoleon Hill did was, he actually went and spoke to some of the most 500 successful people in that time. We are talking about Henry Ford, Alexander Bell, Rosenwald, you name it. Everyone had something common. And this is what he said an educated person is. After researching his entire life and writing this book, Think and Grow Rich. And the lady talked about the phones we are having. Maybe sometimes the phones are useful. Just make a note of this. Please go and read it. Your life will change and your leadership will change, given as a leadership. And this is what he said, and please love to sort of repeat that. He said, an educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. It's not. That's what he said. An educated person is one who has developed the faculties of their mind so that they may acquire anything they want. And this is the beautiful part which we all need to appreciate, without violating the rights of others. Let me repeat that. Without violating the rights of others. And that's what the minister is alluding to. So if you are in education, if you say, if any of us are educated present, are we violating the rights of others? And if we are, perhaps we need to think about it. And just to conclude, we have a responsibility to give consideration to new ways of educating children, not only within Africa, but across the world, because the conflict is across the world. You just need to open up the news and you know what happens. Winston Churchill, who certainly knew a lot about responsibility, said responsibility is the price of greatness. Having confidence, will, and a free mind to do whatever you want to do. The good will then find in others, and that's what you see in yourself. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pankaj. Thank you so much for that. Okay, our next speaker. Now he's concerned about how I'm going to say his name, but bear with me because I must attempt to say this name. It's long, but I think it's doable. So work with me. He's the Group General Manager, Trade Kings Limian of Zambia. Ladies and gentlemen, can we welcome Mr. Lux Minira Yanan Sobrin Mania. Thank you for the love. Thank you very much. You know he's an African, right?
Hi. Well, you made a very good attempt. Before I start, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for his extremely inspiring speech. Indeed, if we had leaders like this across Africa, definitely, the face of Africa would definitely change. Thank you, Minister. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, captains of the industry, I believe all protocols are observed. I am Lux Subramaniam, okay, in short, the Group General Manager of Trade Kings Group. In the next 10 minutes, I will be weaving a true saga that crisscrossed over a 2-decade arduous emotional journey. The Genesis. Trade Kings Limited is the flagship company in the Trade Kings Group. This iconic corporate conglomerate comprises of 8 companies, and each of these companies have a product vertical to support it. There are 4 distinct verticals of business, which are laundry and home care products, food, beverage, and at the other end of the spectrum, industrial steel. The founder shareholders, who are also the directors, are Zambians and hold the same stance across the group. Hence, we are a Zambian group. Before embarking on the odyssey of this Colossus Trade Kings, it's indeed appropriate to mention the pioneer, the visionary, the philanthropist, the founder, shareholder, and director, Group CEO, Mr. Iqbal Mohamed Patel, who was and still is the pivotal node behind the emergence of this humongous business empire. Mr. Patel ushered his childhood in an obscure village near Chipata in Zambia, and later moved to Lusaka for secondary education, the capital city. During his secondary school days in Lusaka, the burning desire to be enterprising came to him naturally. Over the weekends, as a young adolescent, he would hire his father's car, loaded with provisions, drive down to Chipata and sell his wares to be back in readiness for school on Monday. Having completed his school, armed with a school diploma, with a meager capital, he defiantly acquired a ready-made textile trading outfit, and this was his formal entry into the organized business arena. This was his first milestone. Early 80s. He realized the potential for bread in the country and set up his bakery, Universal Bakery, kitted and fitted with equipment manufactured indigenously, a landmark which exists even today. The demand for wheat flour at that time outstripped the supply. To ease the strain on the grain, promoted him to initiate a virgin concept, the outgrower scheme, with the wheat farmers. This is something typical to the cooperative farming that we see today. The late 80s. The success of the hot ovens at the bakery led to the trading of fast-moving consumer goods, buying from large wholesalers in bulk, and then percolating it down the food chain, which are the supermarkets and kiosks in Lusaka. In 1995, Mr. Patel embarked experimenting the manufacture of detergent paste in the garage of his house, and this chronicled the boom detergent revolution. The game changer led to the emergence of an array of hygiene products like bath soaps, household cleaners, dishwashing liquids, and now christened as the home care range. Liquid bleach, hand sanitizers, antiseptics were the recent entrants into the market. In 2005, Mr. Patel realized, after having championed excellence in the home care range, there occurred a change of latitude and a foray into the food vertical was made. Sweet beginnings, as it were, it began with confectionery. A cross-pollination of ideas led to the manufacture of lollipops, biscuits, adult and children breakfast cereals, potato and maize crisps, and soya nuggets, gradually one dovetailing to the other. In 2010, Trade Kings Group established itself as an epitome of quality products. Mr. Patel leveraged this brand equity, thus blossomed the beverage vertical. The beverage segment moved in harmonious choreography, from maize milk to milkshakes, carbonated soft drinks to energy drinks, instant beverages, standing tall, competing eye to eye with the titans of the industry, catering to the insatiable appetite of the local and the regional populace. The recent entry has been the Nectar. In 2010, an epoch-making event was the commissioning of the Kafue steel mills under the banner Universal Mining and Chemical Industries Limited, which prided itself with the state-of-art cutting-edge technology, converting steel scrap to construction steel production. In 2017, this plant became fully backwardly integrated, the first of its kind in most of sub-Saharan Africa, which now converts raw iron ore to finished construction steel products instead of steel scrap through a sophisticated value addition chain. To quote Mr. Patel, the perpetual quest to remain first amongst equals with the titans is a journey and not a destination. Improving lives is the signature line of Trade Kings Group. To augment its intent, there occurred a paradigm shift in the minds of its shareholders. They decided to showcase their philanthropic endeavors, which they have been doing in the last 2 decades at the background, onto a pedestal for public viewing. Thus was born the Trade Kings Foundation, the CSR arm of the group. Its charter has a 5-fold agenda. They are health, education, women empowerment, youth skill development, and orphanage support. In the last 12 months, the foundation has spent over $1 million centered on its core objectives, thus leveling its credo of giving back to the community and maintaining a moral high ground. As I converge to my concluding remarks, on behalf of the shareholders and the directors of the group, I wish to thank the jury for conferring a coveted award on us. This brings pride not only to my group, but also to the nation that I represent, Zambia. Truly Zambian, proudly Zambian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I bet you were in doubt about him being an African, right? Okay, before I move on, there was a name that the Honourable Minister missed out when he was acknowledging his entourage and his team, and indeed members of the Gambian community here in the UK. So, representing, he's the ambassador for for culture here in the UK, representing Gambia. Can we please put our hands together to acknowledge Mr. Njok Malik Jen? Thank you. You would note on our program that, of course, the Honourable Minister of Transport for the Côte d'Ivoire was supposed to be here tonight, unfortunately not able to make it, but can we acknowledge his representative, Ms. Stephanie Acker, Director of Communications for the Ministry. Can we please put our hands together for Ms. Stephanie Acker? She's here. Can you please come forward to just say a few words? Okay, so let me explain why they're laughing. Her table is laughing because she's going to speak a few words to us in French. And for those of us who speak French, you will be kind enough to just interpret to your neighbor, won't you? Thank you, because I know we're all friendly like that. Let's put our hands together for Ms. Acker as she comes.
Good evening. I am going to introduce myself. I'm not the Director of Communication. I am Chef of Cabinet of the Ministry of Transport. So I am Stéphanie Acker, chef de cabinet du ministre des Transports de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Donc pour commencer, je m'excuse, je présente les excuses de Monsieur le ministre des Transports, Monsieur Amadou Koné, qui n'a pas pu être présent. Il aurait voulu vraiment être là, mais pour des contraintes gouvernementales, il n'a pu être là ce matin. Il est d'ailleurs en train de continuer dans le développement du transport, dans l'innovation, dans le transport aérien. Il est en ce moment à Toulouse auprès des Russes, avec le vice-président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Donc nous continuons d'innover dans le transport, notamment le transport aérien en ce moment. Et qu'est-ce que je peux dire? Donc, Monsieur le ministre me charge de présenter, de remercier toute l'organisation d'African Leadership, parce qu'il est vraiment ravi d'avoir obtenu un award avec cette institution, auprès de cette institution. Et donc, je souhaite une bonne soirée à tous et je vous remercie également.
Thank you very much, Ms. Acker. I'm sure we all understood that. She welcomes everybody on behalf of the Minister. Thanks to African Leadership Magazine. But for time, I would have interpreted the whole thing. Thank you all very much for understanding. Okay. And we have another panel discussion, and we're doing very well for time. Don't worry, we should be leaving in time. So if I may have the following people come up to take their seats, please. Can we please welcome Mr. Henry Samoa, CEO, International Bank of Liberia. Mr. Peter Cole Choiri, CEO, Ocean Glory Commodities Limited, Nigeria. Can we put our hands together for him as he comes? Miss Leila Bukuyu, CEO, Mini Enterprises Inc., Liberia. Can we put our hands together for Miss Leila as she comes? And the chairman of Ben Television UK, currently presidential aspirant for Nigeria, Mr. Alistair Shoyinde. Can we put our hands together for him as he comes? And we have Mr. Kojo Osu Afriye, Chief Executive, Forestry Commission Ghana, also joining the conversation. And of course, and we have Mr. John Evers, COO CareTech PLC, also joining the conversation. Can we please put our hands together for him? And to moderate the conversation, let's welcome Mr. Kenneth Nkemnacho. Can we put our hands together for Mr. Kenneth Nkemnacho of the African Leadership Magazine? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Nkemnacho from African Leadership Magazine. I've just been told that we only have 15 minutes to do this. My God, I don't know how we're going to do that. She's too high. Okay, so we're going to go straight to the point. And the topic of discussion is the UK-Africa partnerships for shared prosperity. UK-Africa partnership for shared prosperity. Now, I'm going to put a question forward. How many minutes am I going to give now? Because, okay, 5 more minutes. Because I would like the audience to also say something. That's what I'm asking for additional 5 minutes. And we have 5 members of the panel, and let's see, if 2 minutes is too small for each person. So 3 minutes per person, and we use 5 minutes to maybe 1 or 2 people to say something. Well, in the subject that we're discussing today, there's something that's that's in the air now in the United Kingdom, and that's the issue of Brexit. And we can't deny it that Brexit is going to change the status quo. It's going to change the dynamics of the way UK relates with Africa. And it may be positive, it may remain the same, or it may be negative. We can't tell. But we're just assuming that it's going to be positive. So Brexit is on the way. How can Africa plug in to the advantages of Britain standing alone? That's the main question I would like to ask the members of the panel. So I'll start with you, sir.
So thank you very much. Let me begin by just telling a very short story of the benefits of the UK-African relationship and how the UK can help African nations in the midst of Brexit. All of us are from the banking sector, and you are quite aware of a phenomenon that began some, say, 10, 15 years ago, and that is the de-risking by these international financial institutions. So they began leaving the African market, and as a small bank in Liberia, West Africa, we were greatly affected by that. And that would have almost shut our operations down, because without a correspondent bank, you aren't able to provide services to your clientele, especially in the international space. And so when these international banks began de-risking us, it became a challenge for us. And the only institution that came to our aid to save us was Crown Agents Bank of the UK. And that for us was quite significant, and today remains quite significant in the relationship between the UK and Africa. Without the Crown Agents coming in, it would have impacted our operations in a very significant way, and would have led to even a failure of not only our bank, but a number of banks in Africa. And so that relationship has re-energized us, has reinvigorated us, and we are now able to provide service to our clients. And it all goes back to the relationship between the UK and the African continent, which we think is very, very significant to the growth of Africa.
Thank you so much.
May I say good evening, Africa? Good evening, Africa. Good evening, the UK. I'm going to have to get some warm reaction here. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Well, I will say the way forward is the private sector. The private sector, but with a twist of leadership. When you think about the private sector, you just think of making money. But beyond making money, there should be responsibilities associated. And whether it is at a bilateral level, or it is at a local level, or multinational level, whatever that may be, it comes with leadership. I come from a country where 65% of its population constitutes the youth. 51% constitute women. And oftentimes, we are the breadwinner of our society. We are the very foundation on which our society thrives. And because of that, we are not often given the kind of leverage as our male counterparts or the older generation in order to get the kind of education and all of that required. Because of that, a lot of people in my country, Liberia, will often feel inferior because they are not a doctor, they are not a lawyer, and they are not all of these things. But I sit here today as a clear example of what is possible when you focus within the private sector. Coming from humble beginning, mother illiterate, father an agriculturalist, I got educated and I figure I have to be within the private sector. And being within the private sector, I had to apply leadership within the private sector. So whether Brexit happens or doesn't happen, I think that whatever transition that goes on, the private sector needs to be considered as that engine through which we can collaborate. And once that happens, there will be shared dignity, there will be shared respect, and I frankly think there will be a window for win-win for all of us. So I sit here saying that the private sector is the way forward, and we must be able, and it's not fair that you give only 15 minutes because we need to deal with these topics significantly. But the last thing I have to say, however, is to build on what our Honorable Minister from the Gambia said. When we begin to see the diaspora as a part of us, based on the contribution they make, not just in remittance, but also in knowledge transfer, also in experience and various expertise, we will realize that we do have stakeholders out there that mean a lot to Africa, and UK is of no exception. I thank you.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alistair Shewede. Really, as some of these speakers already concluded or added into the discussion, for me, based here in the United Kingdom, give me the opportunity to be able to know that Africa, with our natural resources, really, we shouldn't be out there begging for arms. Really and truly, what I would like to see with Brexit, even though they're so confused presently here, not knowing if they're going or staying, we need to capitalize on the resources we have in the African continent and bring it to the table so that it will be much more beneficial to us. When we talk about the youth, we're talking basically almost 60% across the whole African continent to be in that age group. And when you look at the international technology companies now, they already focusing their eyes on the African continent, believing that the youth over there are the next generation and the future of not just the African continent, but of the world. So I believe without any doubt that Africa has what it takes for not just Britain only, but Europe and the world to begin to recognize that in order for them to move forward, when you talk about the natural resources that they depend on, is from the African continent. Now, for me, coming from no media background and then setting up the first black TV station in Europe, can definitely show you that without any doubt, if you give us the free access, you allow us to freely develop our own talent, Africa will be the destination of choice, not only to Africa, but to the world.
Hello, good evening. My name is Peter Cole. I'm the MD CEO of Ocean Glory. I want to contribute on the topic Brexit. The first thing I want to say, the key to prosperity is relationship. And I said without relationship, I don't think there will be prosperity. So I want to make everybody understand that the only thing that I see that affects us as in terms of trading is communication and how to build relationship. I'm into shipping and trading, and we do a lot of communication, like sending emails back and forth. And the primary thing is how to understand your partners. You know, if you're dealing with UK, you should be able to understand what the United Kingdom wants from you. If you're dealing with China, you should be able to understand what China wants from you in terms of business relationship. So the key thing is relationship, understanding, and be able to know what is the key thing, what is missing, and what service you can render in a particular state. I believe so much in relationship, and I believe so much in oneness. African is taking the world from 1 to 10, and I believe in the next few years we are going to be the giants of the world because we have a lot of resources. I want to speak this. Please, I need everybody to be in one spirit. Whether you are from the United Kingdom, you are from the United States, I see the world as one, and this is what can give the world peace. If we can understand ourselves that yes, we are one. So in terms of business, we should be able to take away the monopoly of business and be able to interface with ourselves. This will help us to actually build the world from where it is now and be able to create more love in the world, because I believe so much in love. Love can do everything. What love can give us the greatest wealth, the greatest love, can give us better health, because there is lots going on in the world that is absolutely wrong, like the Brexit thing. Well, it's either plus or minus, and if it goes minus, it's for us to sit down and actually learn, because I believe in one thing: if you fail, that's a point for you to be able to sit down and really understand yourself and be able to build yourself forward. So thank you, Speaker. My name is Peter Craig.
Yes, I'm Kojo Osofie, CEO of Forestry Commission, Ghana. We are not reinventing the wheel. Indeed, most African countries have long been working in partnership with the United Kingdom long before EU was built. So it is not as if either going in or staying wherever they are would make any change whatsoever. It won't. But the problem that we have, especially in Ghana, is the fact that we have something that we call the Goggesberg economy. From time immemorial, Africans have been exporting raw materials like gold, cocoa, timber, diamond, you name it, without adding value to this. And therefore, the relationship between us and UK and Europe and elsewhere had not been equal. You send in these raw materials, they add value to it, it comes back to you in the form of cocoa, chocolates, jewelry and others. And then you buy them at exorbitant prices. So until Africans learn to add value to some of the things that you have, and we have these in abundance, and yet we are swimming in poverty as a result of the fact that most of these are not value added. And so my contribution is this, that Africans must add value to all the things that we have, and then be competitive, so that we can have a shared partnership. Otherwise, the partnership cannot be shared as long as it is not equal. As long as we have our hands in the mouths of these guys, they will continue to knock our heads, and if they do so, they'll bite us. So let us add value, and then we shall compete favorably as we ought to. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Ivers. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of CareTech. CareTech has been going for 25 years in the UK. We're the largest provider of private healthcare, and I don't have a lot to say actually about Brexit. I think business and working together is not necessarily about constructs in Europe or wherever. The two brothers who founded my company 25 years ago, they were young boys and got on a plane with their parents from Africa, and the CEO, Haroon, tells the story of his mother navigating on the plane and looking at a map to find the way where to land the plane. And they landed with absolutely no idea of what they were going to do in this country. And they've gone from humble origins, but actually they've now become one of the largest providers of healthcare in the UK. I'm really enthused by the opportunities in Africa. I think the relationships go far beyond the European relationships. I think we can learn from each other, we can work together. I think it's not about tariffs and boundaries and tax and all those things. I think it's actually about people trusting each other, working together, empathy, and I think I'm really enthused by tonight. There's a lot of energy and positive vitality. So I've gone away from here tonight, and thank you for inviting me, thinking, wow, what an energy in Africa. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Well, what a discussion, and there are some valid points that have been raised in this case. The first speaker talked about how Proud Bank rescued the organization, which is so awesome. You know, the second speaker talked about private sector participation. The third speaker talked about the focus on natural resources and on the youth. And the first speaker talked about the key to prosperity being relationship. And the fifth one said add values to what you have, which is very, very essential. We have to add values to what we have, add values to our natural resources, and that's very important. Then the last speaker talked about empathy and trust. Someone took the blame, checking the map, looking for, let one or two people say something. I would like to add something in front of the comments. See, in terms of the topic we're talking about today, for instance, the Commonwealth, when it started, was set up for Commonwealth. You know what that means? Commonwealth. But today, it's very uncommon in terms of the wealth that's being shared by the Commonwealth Organization. And it's like Britain has made it a bit more common than usual. You know what I mean. And was the sincerity on the part of both partners in terms of shared prosperity, Africa-UK relationship. That's why I take so much importance. I put so much importance on the shared value you talked about, which is very essential. And another thing I would like to talk about is this. I asked this question in one of our last events, and I'm going to repeat this again. Thank God the Honorable Minister is here, and I would like to say that where the Minister is. But I said that where the Minister of Energy in Sierra Leone was there. See, when the British came to Africa, or whoever colonized us, whichever nation came from, they built an institution, or they built institutions, and they left a few assets behind. When they left, they took the institution away and just left the buildings. So we were left without institutions. That's why the political institution is dead. And I'm happy that someone in the position of the minister made a very courageous statement. I was there, I was like, oh my God. You know, a very courageous statement. When he said to the media, look on us, scrutinize us, probe us, tell us where we are right and tell us where we are wrong. That's very essential. What is Africa doing to build institutions? Not just an organization, because institutions exceed organization. Institution will make you not still in government. Institution will make you do the right thing that you have to do. Then secondly, besides raw materials and tourism, what is Africa bringing to the table? This was another statement I made in our last event, and I'll keep making this statement until something starts happening. If you're going to negotiate with someone, if you're going to have a meeting with someone, you come to the table with something. If you're just coming with something I don't identify to be gold, it's black, I don't even know if it's gold, you give me anything, I can't tell if it's gold. But if you can process it and make it glitter, then I'll know this is gold. If I test it, it's gold. So I'm giving one or two people opportunities to say something, maybe ask the panelist question, and okay, there's someone over there. Oh, the minister, I'll give you the honor first.
I will try to be very brief. Well, you see, the private sector that you talked about has a role to play in strengthening governance, in making sure that those in office, you don't corrupt them, in fulfilling your corporate responsibility that's maximizing profit. You go all the way in breaking all the norms, the tenets, and the values. And again, you create an atmosphere that, when developed, destroy the very institutions that he talks about, that we try to build the police, the judiciary, all those issues that strengthen governance. If they are corrupted by greedy business or a private sector that is over ambitious about profit, then of course everything fails. I think we need to go back to the drawing board. And if the government officials or other officials want to corrupt you, it's your responsibility not to accept it. So I think really, we talked about corruption in government, but I think the private sector in wanting to bid contracts, they do a lot of harm to the system. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yes, someone there.
I'm going to come to the lady. Thank you. Not being biased. She was up first. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for coming. I would say Africa, our natural resources, we are blessed. We are beautifully blessed. Is it the land? Is it the weather? Is it the people? Is it the young people? Is it the women? Is it the politicians? Come on. So I really appreciate our minister this evening for what he's saying. But I would say we need to join politics, number one. Because in Africa, if you are not a politician, we need to be amongst them. You can't make we here, we can't just sit down here and be talking grammar. What I'm trying to say is, number one, we need to go home or link ourselves to home. Like I am doing, like Mr. Alicia is doing as our presidential candidate. We need to partner home. Like Mr. Patel was saying, we have all the natural resources. Packaging. Look at what we're eating tonight. Sorry? Okay, let me quickly run it up. Quality, packaging, and NGO. Skill acquisition. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm coming. Bear with me. I'm coming. Be patient. And I'm going to ask, if we're all going to get involved, then you need to cut it short. If you make it long, we have to respect everybody's time. You agree with me, right? Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be straight to the point. My name is Kede Ahie. I'm a lawyer and a publisher. What I will be saying is, Brexit is fine, but it's not important. What is important and topical is GDPR. If you are an SME or you are a business, that's General Data Protection, or the data, GDPR. That is what is important. That is what some of us as lawyers get paid a lot of money to deal with now. So it affects everybody. If you do business in Europe and you collect data, you will, if you don't do it well, pay 20 million euro fine, or 4% of your general money you make globally. So think very well. If you want to see me, we can discuss.
Okay, all right.
He's a good business.
Okay. So he just used the moment to sell himself.
Yeah.
All right. So we have two more hands here.
Yeah, two more.
I'm going to try and take them. Okay, can we keep the noise out? Thank you.
My name is. I think my name is Adi Aminu, former mayor of Lambeth. My question is to the panel in terms of leadership, because everybody has said a lot of things tonight. Everybody has said a lot tonight about politics, leadership. I think the problem we have in Africa is leadership, because we have everything, not until we elect the credible people to lead us. Nothing is going to change in Africa. So I want the panel to actually look into how we select candidates in Africa, the money, politics they play in Africa. How do we get rid of that kind of politics, so that we don't actually bribe people or give them money incentive to actually get credible candidates to lead us, especially looking at politicians in the diaspora. I'm a former councillor and former mayor of Lambeth as well. and recently published a book about British Nigerian politicians in United Kingdom and Ireland. So we have a lot of African diasporas who are politicians in this country, who have contributed to this political system here. Why can't we tap into all these leaders we have in this country to help African continent? So that is what we should be looking at.
Thank you very much, former Mayor. Okay, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I stand on the same protocol. My name is Chief. I like the echo. 1 minute. Let me start over again. My names are Chief Alex I'm in Nigeria. I want to ask a question, just one or two questions. Now, I want to direct it to Alistair, sorry, the presidential aspirant who is standing for election in Nigeria. I also want to place a record that I also am standing for elections in Nigeria as a member of the Federal House of Representatives. So my question touches on the minister from Gambia when he talked about integrity, probity, and the fact that Africa needs leadership that is tested, that people should vote for people that should hold them accountable for office and let them come out of it and then go back to the profession, let them go back to something and not hang on to politics forever. Yeah. One of my pledges is that I go in for only one term. I don't want to do more than one term. So I want to ask Alice. Now he mentioned youth. Again, it's one of my central themes. So the question will be, what will he be intending to do? Africa needs that direction to help our youth. So can he help me explain more on what strategies that we can use for Africa to develop youth, to get into politics a lot more, and to participate in government? Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the sake of time, okay, for the sake of time, I will recap, if I can have everybody's attention, please. I will recap the questions. For the sake of time, if you don't give any preamble, if you can just get to the question, because we must get on with the awards. So if it's okay, sir. Just one more. I need to have another lady. We've had 4 men.
Please, because someone is contesting for the mayoral seat in London, I would like him to say something.
So we should not allow another woman?
It's not about gender.
Just a little balance.
Okay, let the woman speak for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and my gratitude to Priscilla and everyone. I'm from Kenya. My question is, in Africa we've got laws of taxation, and my question goes on the high taxation that goes in our country. So that's my first question to the Honourable Minister. And on behalf of the UK Africa Diaspora Forum, one of the issues that I hear about is most diasporans would like to go back to their countries, but they don't have the provision to go back to their countries. So the question is, how do you create a sustainable development position for the diaspora to be able to go down to their countries in order to pursue employment in these countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we had a mayoral candidate who said. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Winston McKenzie, otherwise known as Champ, so don't even try it, any guys out there. Let me tell you, Africa, wake up. I want to see the people of Africa wake up. Gravitate towards those in office who gravitate towards you. Africa's been sleeping for far too long. All your lives have been sleeping. You're the guys. During my candidacy for the office of Mayor of London, it's my second time now. It's my second time. I'm going to invigorate and encourage the African nation to get involved in British politics because it matters. Getting those corridors of power and help to invigorate and encourage and see your country grow. You may think your vote doesn't count, it doesn't matter, you live here, not in Africa. What you do here has a knock-on effect all over the world. This is a powerful country. Get involved in politics today. Thank you.
Champ says we should all get involved in politics. So let me come back and reiterate the questions that were asked. So the young lady at the back, on behalf of so if I may have everybody's attention, please. Are we all still in the room? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. So the last question was, what do we do for our African diasporas that want to come back but don't have the means? And also, what are we doing about the high taxation, in Africa? I'm assuming that is the high taxation that are there, costing us, but not necessarily paid by the multinationals that we have in the African countries. And then our other question was about the youth. What would Mr. Alistair Shode be doing about the youth to encourage them to participate, I think. And also, Mr. Former Mayor asked about, what we need to do to get more Africans involved, which I believe that Trump was echoing that. And the others were comments as for how we should get involved by the lady who spoke initially. And of course, the Honourable Minister. Oh, there was another question to you, sir, challenging what you said about politicians not remaining in after they leave office, the fact that we should have something for them to do. I don't think he concluded the question, but I think he probably wanted to say, why do we need to provide something for them to do? So I think I just about got it all. I hope I did. If I didn't, forgive me. It wasn't the intention.
What happened to you? You're not going to play, sir. That's because you wanted to play.
When they leave office, I said give them guarantee as a means of survival. Simple and straightforward in order to minimize, avoid level of temptation to corruption.
Sorry, that was my mistake. So what the question before I think was, why do we have to do that?
That's why you have in this country, that's why you have all modern democracies in the world. When people leave office, they need to be guaranteed a future. And that's why when you leave office, you are paid your salary, you are given all the facilities and benefits to stay to maintain the dignity of the office that you left.
Hi, Chief Alex. Over the last more than 10 years, I have been working with the youth across the more or less telling them what it takes to do something. For me, when I got into the United Kingdom of London, the reason why I went into the media is because almost every crime that happens in London, in UK, somebody will say he's Nigerian, he's Ghanaian, he's from Togo, because they just can't find their identification. So for that reason, I wanted to look at, but something has to happen. Somebody has to change the story. Somebody has to change the narrative. And that's the reason why I went into the media, to begin to highlight that some nationals that you're blaming actually are not from that country. These are the people. But nevertheless, I was focusing on the positive role model within the black community to highlight them and then produce programs and then give it to the mainstream TV station. Nevertheless, up to this minute, I'm still mentoring people in Nigeria, in Ghana, and as many as possible, even here in the United Kingdom. Because as I say, my background is not from media, yet I have set up the first black TV station. But one thing again that I realized, if I'm actually from the mainstream, my platform demands before the advert of the Facebook, Twitter, probably an African person who have been the person that has created this global apps rather than where it's coming from. But no bad feelings, because there are a lot of Africans as well that have created multi-billion-dollar apps and so what we have to do is show out what we're doing, and hopefully the youth will get involved and begin to look to the future, just like other people have commented that they have indeed released high levels of engagement, but you have to show it by your own. Thank you.
To just react to what the Honorable Minister from Gambia said, that's basically why I said the private sector needs leadership as well. And in 30 seconds, I'll just give a quick story. So about, 4 years ago when Ebola hit Liberia, we did not know what it was. We did not know how to react to it. We did not know what to do. It was one of the biggest calamities in recent history. As a private sector practitioner, we realized that there were a team of multinational African actors who were first responders that came to fight the deadly Ebola crisis, some of whom came from Nigeria and Kenya and other African countries. So I remember as a private sector practitioner asking myself, what can I do? I became one of the hosts for these doctors, because at this point in time, touching another person could have meant your death sentence. You just didn't know what was going to happen and all of that. So I remember the African Union ambassador to Liberia at the time reaching out to me and saying, Leila, and our then foreign minister, saying, Leila, we do need accommodation, but we are very careful about hygiene and all of these different things. And as a private sector practitioner, I was one of those that accommodated some of the first team of multinational African actors that came to fight Ebola. At this point in time, government, it could not just be government alone. Government could not just handle it all. So it does rise and fall on leadership. And another thing I would say is that the one collateral that we must all have, whether government or private sector, should be our reputation. Let that reputation serve as the collateral. And in that way, the question of bribery and corruption will be something that we will all stand up and safeguard ourselves. Thank you.
Very, very last one. Very, very last.
Thank you for. In terms of, I think somebody asked what we are doing to support the diaspora from coming home, either supporting them in whatever way that we can. My short answer is that we must move beyond just the remittances that the diasporans bring home, but rather integrating them in the system. In Ghana, I can assure you that about 40% of ministers and some other CEOs and others have all been given to the diasporans, because we realize that we have a lot of talent out here. It's equally the same measure as we have in Ghana. And so we have brought them in. Some are deputy CEOs, some are CEOs, and so on and so forth. And I think that Ghanaians are better with that fusion of the talent. And so we need to encourage the diaspora, not only in terms of remittances that they bring, and also bringing them in, and then also integrating them in the system.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. A round of applause for our partners. You did so well, and really, really thank you for everything that happens today. And I hope someone is taking something home this night. And it's time to invest in the continent and also invest in ourselves. And get to where we want to be and become who we want to become. I believe it's possible, if we believe it's possible, and take cognitive steps towards the destination we actually want to be. And
No. Cream.
Open a leeway for everyone that wants to climb the ladder. The ladder is possible, and it's there for everyone to climb. You take the step to climb. Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Nacho. Can we please put our hands together for our panelists, Mr. Henry Sambora, Mr. Peter Cole, Ms. Leila, Mr. Alistair Shode, and Mr. Kujobusu Afriye. May we please take our seats as we get ourselves ready for the award session. Can I ask us all to please take our seats?
Thank you.
Are we all seated? It's time for that most important part of our evening, the time that most of us are here tonight. And I'll be so grateful if you can give me your attention once again. Let me just say that, thank you, sir, thank you. Let me just say that we're doing extremely well for time. And I dare say that you've all been extremely patient with us, and we appreciate that. So once again, to present our first two awards tonight, can I please ask Mr. Tim Morris to please come back up? Can we put our hands together for him as he returns to the podium? Our first recipient tonight, he's a Gambian politician. He's a current minister. He's also the leader of the National Reconciliation Party, NRP, and has been a presidential candidate in 1996, 2001, and 2011. He was the National Assembly member for Upper Salua from 1997 to 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me, he's been extremely passionate tonight, and he has educated us. He has been very, very inspiring. Can we please put our hands together to welcome Honorable Hamid N.K. Barr, the Minister of Tourism and Culture for the Gambia.
But you need more than him. You need more than him. You need at least 80% of your time to be like that. You need 10% to come to Britain. One of his time, this one will be all the
There is my two good friends, of course. One is councillor, and both of them are councillors in different parts, Labour councillors.
Please take your seats. We will do some more photographs in a moment once we're through. Please take your seats, please. Please, may I have everybody's attention. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you. Please take your seats. Thank you all. Thank you all for your attention. Except for the minister, of course. Please take their seats.
So that is not went by the
meeting's not over. Your desserts are coming. We're just starting the don't put it here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next recipient has headed the Department of Transport of Cote d'Ivoire since January 2017. He was born on August 4th, 1966. He joined the government for the first time in 2005. I'm just going to wait for the photographs to be over. Thank you, everybody. I'll start again.
That's the name of this magazine, of this letter.
Since January 2017, was born on August 4th, 1966. He joined the government for the first time in 2005 as the Minister of Tourism. Appointed later in 2007 as the Minister of African Integration, he revealed himself as a skillful diplomat, and one of his successes at his position was the signing of the economic partnership agreements between Cote d'Ivoire and the European Union. From the government, he was appointed in 2011 again as the administrator at the African Development Bank for Cote d'Ivoire. I see some people are asking our photographers and our cameramen to please, because they can't see you, CJs. So if we can do it from the side, it would be great. As we're all aware, the Minister is not here tonight, but he's ably represented by Ms. Stephanie Akka. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for the Honourable Minister of Transport, Amadou Bakari, receiving an award. On his behalf is Ms. Stephanie Akka.
Thank you.